What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Hardworking Happy Hour. I'm Sean.
And I'm Catherine, and as always, we're breaking down all things trades, entrepreneurship, and turning your creativity into a passion career.
And we have a guest this week. We finally have a guest that we have been talking about for 2 weeks now. We have Jeff Wraley of Groundwork.
Yay!
LLC Incorporated?
Inc.
Inc.
We're big time.
Whoa.
Big time, watch out. Yeah.
Did I say your last name correctly? Wraley?
Rayleigh, like Ray of Sunshine.
That is really good name. Like that. Anyway, we have Jeff Wraley, Groundwork, CEO and founder of Groundwork Inc., an app/software that you're going to use for your business to mostly, I'd say, pre-qualify clients.
Yep.
Pre-qualify clients. And anybody that listens to the podcast knows that we are very big on pre-qualifying, almost to a fault.
Like the biggest.
Like almost like to an extreme degree, which deters lots of people from dealing with us because so many hoops to jump through. But I'm excited to talk to you about kind of how you got into this, where you saw the need for this, because it's something that we didn't hear a lot of people talking about until we found it to be a need for us. So excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on, and excited to be, part of the show. Watch the stuff.
All the way
listen
from
to
the
stuff,
Midwest.
All the way from the Midwest. It's a nice early flight this morning.
Yeah.
Got some caffeine in me this afternoon. Ready to rock.
Did we land on it is the Midwest?
Yes, we were talking about this before we started recording. Definitely Midwest. Like,
It's like the heart of the
it is
Midwest.
the heart. It is. They call it the crossroads of America.
Oh.
That is one of the nicknames of the state of Indiana. If you look at the map, it's like literally like highways like passing through Indianapolis, like Chicago to Nashville, like Columbus to Columbus, Cincinnati. It's just like veins coming in, basically like delivering corn and soybeans everywhere.
Nobody's there to stay. They're just there to pass through. It's kind of
yeah, but when you stay, it's like you get great food and great hospitality, and it's
I bet
a good
everyone's
spot.
so nice.
Oh yeah, everybody is.
Okay, yeah.
It's a great spot.
I think what we landed on was anything west of Philly is the Midwest. I think that was the definition we kind of landed on.
Sure.
All right, so Jeff, we initially met back in 2019.
I think that's right. Yeah.
For some reason, I remember exactly where we were.
I do not. You're gonna have to remind me of this.
We were at 4th Street Live in Louisville, Kentucky.
Maybe I do remember this.
At Deck Expo.
Yep.
And I had just gotten into town. I went to the show
I remember
by
this
myself.
now. Yes,
and you
that's
were
right.
like the first person I saw when I got into town at the bar.
I remember this
And you were
now.
like, hey, what's up? My name's Jeff. I don't know. I follow you on Instagram or something. And here we are.
Yeah.
4 years later?
Almost, yeah.
4 years later. And you were telling us earlier that you were kind of just getting started with the business at that point. Kind of didn't know what exactly it was yet. You were kind of feeling things out. And I guess tell us a little bit about that period of your life, like kind of what was your start in tech?
Yeah.
And then how did that translate into we need to build something for the trades?
Yeah, so I'm actually an engineer by schooling. So I went to Purdue, got an engineering degree.
Oh, dang.
Civil engineering degree. So I worked in large scale construction, like big projects, like higher education, all that stuff. So then got into technology in that space and like the commercial contracting industry. But my wife's a designer. And so we've like always bought the ugly house and like made it pretty, right? So like with commercial background and doing projects, like I was telling Sean you earlier, is like I actually like doing stuff myself too, like with my hands. So it just kind of, as we got 10 plus years into our working lives, it was kind of like, all right, what am I doing? What do I uniquely know about that nobody else can like put the pieces together? Because I'm just very entrepreneurial. I was like, I know the trades. I know like construction, like nuts and bolts. I can talk shop with a lot of contractors. I've worked with a lot of residential contractors. and just kind of had this idea as we were renovating our house of like, hey, there's this like whole pre-qualification sales process thing. Like the sales process is like really old school, the way that everybody's running it. And like, maybe there's a different way to do it. And so that's kind of where it was. And when I met you, it was like really in that exploratory phase. I kind of had a concept of what I was doing, but it was like, I might have had a couple of paying customers on like the old junky version of the product and just kind of testing things out like a lot of business owners do. I mean, like early on, we were talking earlier and over lunch and just hanging out. It's like, just kind of test stuff out, see what works. And, one thing leads to another, and here we are.
Yeah. So your like trade, training education is around engineering, like not software engineering.
Correct. Not software engineering.
Okay. So is that something that you kind of like took on as sort of like a hobby? I mean, an engineering mind is an engineering mind. Yep. So I imagine that it translates pretty well, but was that something like you just started like, oh, this is interesting, just started tinkering with, or how did you make that transition?
Well, I think I did it the smart way. Well, maybe it was a dumb way. I don't know, but maybe we can debate that. I have a hot debate about it. But
yeah, can't wait.
I actually didn't learn to code.
That's the dumb way.
Yeah.
You should have learned how to.
I absolutely probably, I don't know. It takes a long time to be good at that, right? So I think, we've used partners. Now we have a team internally that does the coding stuff. However, early on, and for folks that are interested in like tech stuff, which I mean, honestly, a lot of contractors increasingly are, which is awesome, can be a detriment to some businesses. But there's really cool tools out there that you just need to have an engineering brain, which, I do. I love to see how things fit together, build processes. So there are tools out there that you don't necessarily have to build software, like hard code software, stroke code, low code automation builders like Zapier. And, there's just like, you can, if you're smart about it, you can like kind of fake what software feels like. So honestly, when I met you, that's kind of what it was. And it was just like a thing, and it was like a cheap and easy way to test an idea. Yeah. That's really what it was. And so since then we ran up against the edge of that constraint of like, what we really want to do, we can't really do with this like low code type of version of things. If we're going to refactor and rebuild the whole thing, let's like actually build a piece of software that's going to be here to stay, that we can build it exactly how we want it to and make it a really impressive piece of software.
I think that's something a lot of like businesses in general can kind of relate to. It's you kind of have to evaluate like what you have and where you ultimately want to go with this thing, and how do you have to structure everything to get there. Like, it reminds me of, we are very unique in that we only have one crew, and it's like people are always asking us like, we know that you get plenty of leads, like why aren't you scaling up? Why don't you get a second crew? Why don't you have like a dump truck? Like all of these things, or like an excavator. There's always just a million questions of like, why don't you get that? And it's like, yeah, we could definitely use that, but if I go and buy a dump truck and an excavator, now I need to buy a dump truck, buy an excavator, buy a trailer to haul it around, have a yard to store it in, have a place to do maintenance on it. Like,
more projects to keep it using.
Exactly.
Like, to use it.
So like, we kind of are at that threshold where it's like, for right now, it makes sense to rent a lot of stuff as opposed to scale up and buy all this stuff. But if we wanted to get to a $10 million design build company, we would have to make those investments and kind of build a different kind of structure from the start, which it sounds like you had that crossroads pretty early where you're like, you know what, let's rebuild this so that this version is scalable.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, like we probably could have rebuilt or like retooled what we were doing in a way that would have kept us going, and like we could have, still grown, but it's a call. Like, it's kind of like what kind of business you want to run. I think that's like when we see contractors and just like a general business principle, it's like, what kind of business do you want to run? Like, where do you want to build value? And that like overall strategy can like inform some of those big directional decisions. And for us, it was like actually build some software.
Yeah.
So, how did you find yourself at the intersection of trades, tech, and sales? I feel like those are three very different things, and it seems like you have a passion for all three.
Yeah.
So, where's the link there?
I mean, the trades and tech, that was kind of the easier one.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working in the general contracting space, I was a part of a team that was like rolling out technology across the company, like nationwide. So it's like big old pieces of software like SAP, if anyone's familiar with it's like just huge, massive piece of software that it manages accounting, and all the processes, job site progress and, payments and subcontracts and everything was in that. Submittals, like everything was in it. And these are for like $100 million projects plus, right? So I kind of I fell in love with, and so I was a part of a group that would like travel around to job sites. So I was living in Virginia at the time, driving up to Baltimore, and I'd meet with, the 60-year-old superintendent who's like, he's
doesn't want to use the software.
Like, kid, what are you trying to do? Like, no, I'm not messing around with this. I'm like, well, here, click this button here. And they're like, yeah, buzz off, buddy. And, but I love that challenge. I love just like the oddity of it in a way, of like that innovation cycle. And then just came to realize that commercial contractors have a lot more resources, right? The dollar amounts are bigger. So technology had kind of crept into commercial contracting, and it was kind of like, well, where's it going next? Probably the smaller dudes, right? Smaller companies who don't quite have that change in their pocket yet to invest. So that seems like a smart place to build something. It's like, okay, cool. That was really where it started. And then, I had a bunch of concepts of how that might play out, ideas, and most of them were in construction and tech, but I mean, there were some other ideas on the board that were just hilarious. But, then it was like, okay, what am I actually kind of qualified here to do? It's like, I'm not going to open up a, retail store or something like that. So it just became construction and tech. And then the sales portion, I consulted for a little bit, and part of that is just general business development, building relationships with people. I just generally really like people, different people, building those relationships. I'm very much an extrovert. So some of it comes naturally to me, but there's a craft to good sales.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a ton of that. I had a sales coach, and just studied. I mean, I enjoy educating myself and just getting smarter on stuff, and sales is a big part of that. As I had this concept of, what is now groundwork, it's like, hey, maybe the sales process for contractors could be different. It's like, well, I know how contractors in the residential sense have sold to me. There's probably some reason why they do it that way. Why is that? How, could it be different? Mm-hmm. And then, test, iterate, learn, test, iterate, learn. And so it was that sales part was a huge learning process. But, I've learned a ton. I feel like I've got, not saying I'd be the lead salesperson at, any shop along the way, but the theories and the, and also rewriting it, right? It's going to be different.
Yeah.
Newsflash, the internet's changed the way people interact with businesses and each other. And so it's going to be different 5 years from now. And really that's the goal that we're building towards, is what's it look like in the future? So part of it's knowledge of the past, but then it's okay, what's it look like with all the other cultural and technology trends going on? And that's the fun part, because that's what you go build cool stuff technology wise.
I think we're at an interesting point where it seems like the old school people in the trades were you have to go out to every lead. You have to go to the house, some people that we talk to about our strategy of no, you have to, we won't answer a phone call. You have to email us, then you have to send, then we'll do a call, all this stuff. I think there's an old school mentality of like you have to be the one to like go and get this sale.
Yeah.
Where there's a new feeling that the contractor has a little bit more power and a little bit more of that kind of decision making where they're kind of like interviewing the client, and that's where I think pre-qualifying comes in and is super important, because if you build a good enough reputation, like you can have enough leads to where you can be in the driver's seat where you don't have to chase down every lead. You kind of want them to bring that their desires and their whatever they want to you, and then you can almost interview them. So I think we are seeing that change in the industry, which is, I always say, the most important thing, because I used to waste so much time just going out to everyone's house just after, oh, you want like a deck or something? Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
I'll come out.
whatever, yeah.
And then you get there and it's like, well, I just need one board.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, if I knew that, I could have just like fixed that one board in the same amount of time that I'm here just talking to you about nonsense.
Right,
you know?
right.
So I think it's super important to do that. And what have you found when you're talking to contractors? Like, what's their biggest? Is it just the time wasting? Like, what's their biggest pain point that you're solving?
Yeah, I mean, if I actually polled a subgroup of our kind of power users, you know, how do you measure ROI of using Groundwork in your business? And that's it. It's the time wasters.
Yeah.
The pre-qual process, like the on-site pre-qual process, like if you add up, we do an exercise every once in a while as we're like in our sales process when we're talking to contractors, like, hey, what's an hour of your salesperson's time worth? Like, and how many sales appointments do they go on? Like, what does it cost for them to do one sales appointment and then multiply that out? Right? It becomes it's a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
And so just thinking about that efficiency and like, hey, am I really going after the leads that I want to go after? I think that's a number one. But what we've started to see, honestly, as we've worked with contractors, they have started to tell us like, hey, this is actually a relationship builder tool. So it's not just, I've seen a lot of different sales strategies, you know, talking to thousands of contractors the last couple of years. And some people who like get in love with like the pre-qual side of things. Now you all have a unique situation, right? You're only trying to do so many projects. And so like, it makes sense. Most people are not like that, right?
Yeah.
But they still maybe like, just like kind of slap the prospect in the face with like, no, we're not doing it that way.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm not coming to see you. And they're like, my time's valuable. And they're like, prospect's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, easy. Like, I get it, you know, but I was like, wanted to have a conversation with you. And like, geez.
Yeah.
You know, so like that like value build for each side of the conversation, and making the sales process not just something that's like a time protector, but also like a relationship and a trust builder. Like we've gone to great lengths in like how we've built the software to allow contractors to do that. And I think that the people that we have using the tool that way get so much more out of it than just like, hey, I saved, you know, a handful of hours this week, just kind of qualifying and like making sure my pipeline's tight. And that goes in, I mean, I could go on a soapbox here on like how that's going to be effective in the years to come with younger homeowners and blah, 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 blah. Like it's just the way kind of business is done nowadays. So yeah, there's the time saving side of things, but also just like sales strategy, like being a helpful human. Like how can you be helpful in a 10-minute phone conversation? Well, you can be helpful if you like actually know what you're going to look at, you know, and like you can give some real good feedback. So yeah, it's kind of that twofold type of thing.
I think it's also an interesting product because it not only helps the contractor pre-qualify people, which is great. And I find honestly, like just a great way to pre-qualify is it doesn't even matter what the thing is, but have a potential client just follow one instruction, whether it's fill out this form or like do 10 jumping jacks. Like just doesn't have to be like practical. Like if they can just follow one direction and respect your process, that's already in itself a great pre-qualifier. So like sending a video, that is a task they have to do, and it's a helpful one, not doing
for
jumping
them
jacks.
and for you. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
you're going to get more out of it. Yeah.
And
Maybe we should take a step back and explain how groundwork works. So, like when you say taking a video,
lay the groundwork.
we should probably lay the groundwork of how
Okay.
it works, because people might
I'm
not
gonna,
know.
I'm going to try to do this in like one sentence.
Okay.
So groundwork helps contractors get video project walkthroughs from homeowners before a sales appointment. Sometimes it completely displaces that sales appointment.
Whoa. That was like you were going on a second sentence.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah. You had it.
That
you were
was
looking-
a great first
that good?
sentence. That
Was that
was
good?
perfect.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
really
that was
good.
really
Yeah.
There you
good.
go. and that's essentially what we do. Help you get videos from homeowners. It's really easy to do. And I don't know. Am I at my sentence limit?
You can have a couple more sentences.
you we'll let you like recharge. It'll be like
Like I get like a
Yeah, you
like your
recharge.
life on a video
exactly.
game.
Yeah,
Okay, your health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's basically what we do.
Yes. Okay.
what
Now
I
that
was
people
going
have a little bit of context. Now
Yeah.
you can finish.
Yep. Thank you so much for that.
We
Yeah.
knew what it was. I wanted the people to know how it works.
People don't know
The
what it is.
people.
They're like,
Hey,
"What
you
are
gotta
you
let people
talking
know.
about?
Yeah.
I don't know what
Get
you're
them in here.
talking about."
Exactly.
People never know what we're talking about. And they
we
still listen.
barely do either.
I don't know at all. Anyway, what I was going to say was it's also a great thing for the client because we always talk about it. Like, what's the last thing in the world you want when you want to get a project done? If you're a millennial, somebody at your house trying to sell
Yeah.
you in person.
Yep.
Like, that's so uncomfortable. People just want to, like, nobody wants to, like, call a pizza place and talk to someone on the phone. It's like, I'm gonna DoorDash it because I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know they're just gonna leave it on the step, and I don't have to see anybody. Like, people want, like, they, especially when it comes to something in the trades, like, they don't want someone in their face, like,
Right.
pressure selling
Yeah.
them. They want to, like, oh, I can just send you a video, and you're gonna maybe do a consultation call, and I can get information
Right.
without you in my face. I think for the client, that's also like, oh wow, this is a good experience. This is
Yeah.
a good way to do it.
I had a window salesman when we were renovating our house outside of Indianapolis, which is like honestly where the idea for this whole thing spawned. I had a window salesman, which they're oftentimes a special breed.
Yeah. I feel like I know
there's
exactly
certain-
what you're going to say.
Certain ones.
Connotation to
Certain
it,
ones. And this guy, had his like hair was obviously like dyed, like mustache, like classic,
Yeah.
classic setup, And, I'm kind of secret shopping him a little bit, just kind of like doing my research of like, hey, what's this process like? And just taking my mental notes. But I was kind of hurrying him up a little bit too, because I was like, all right, I get it. But he kept on like going from one trick to the other. He was like standing on windows. He like had a torch on a window. I was like, bro, I don't get it. Like this is not working, buddy. Like, I don't know how to tell it to him, but like, and I'm not saying that that's not the norm, but I think it is culturally kind of that's kind of what the path is, right? Like it's go do the thing, and get in front of people. And, I think there's just a big, for people who haven't realized it, there's a big shift ahead.
Do you think that, I feel like maybe this is an obvious question, but I know that COVID has probably accelerated, like we didn't do like online stuff until COVID kind of forced Sean to go that route. And since you started in 2018,
We didn't
2019.
even have the internet before then.
Yeah, it didn't even exist, I don't
Yeah.
think. You were probably experiencing that same change where it was accelerated by COVID. Do you think that that's a shift, like, do you think that's a COVID shift, or do you think that's just like younger people getting into the industry that are kind of pushing the online mentality of like a sales funnel?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pushed forward this type of behavior, right? If you look at, I don't know, there's probably some source that says like how many Zoom sessions have been held, like 2018, like there's a certain number, monthly average, whatever, versus like 2020, like call it like May of 2020 or whatever, like pretty likely a pretty big difference. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's probably true. So I think there's just like a general cultural behavior shift that was like moved forward by the whole pandemic situation. Not to say that it wouldn't have happened before, because I mean, who knows where we would be as a company, honestly, if if the push forward hadn't happened, right? Like we were kind of like in that, whether we were smart or lucky, I don't know. Hopefully a little bit of both, but certainly changed a lot. It changed a lot of the way that people. I sometimes talk about like contractors jumping on a Zoom, like before, like 2018. Like that was a common thing I would hear as I was, talking to people about like the concept that I was working on. They're like, why don't they just do a Zoom call? I was like, contractors and a Zoom, like these small business owners don't know Zoom. That's a corporate thing. And like, that's not my words. That was like, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like, and then it like all of a sudden overnight, like people started thinking differently. So I think that's a huge factor. It is a huge push forward of like the way people are thinking. All the tools were there. It's kind of like QR codes too, right? Like QR codes were like kind of like useless, like a weird party trick type of thing. And then like all of a sudden restaurants had to use them. And now like way more people use them just because it's like kind of more of a cultural habit at this point. So it's kind of, I definitely think there are like very specific elements of how we interact with technology that contractors and everybody else do differently now because of the pandemic than they would have otherwise.
I think that we would have eventually gone to like this route where you fill out the form. Every prospect starts with a consultation call, but that was the reason. It gave me a reason to like do it. Yeah. And like, this is how we're doing it right now. Like we almost were forced into that. Mm-hmm. And I think we would have went that way eventually at some point anyway, but it gave us the reason to jump into it, gave us like a reason to go that route, and then realize like this is not only just as effective, it's probably more effective because I'm less distracted with everything. They've sent me pictures. I'm looking at, the backyard. I'm, talking to them. I'm taking notes. Like it's more productive and I'm saving so much time. So I think for a lot of people, it was just that like kick towards something that was coming. Might have taken a lot longer to come around, but I think millennials and like our ideal client is probably somewhere around our age. They just buy things differently, and I think that was pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. They don't want that like the guy coming to your house and like jumping on a window. And like it reminds me of, we had like a Cutco salesperson come to my house when I was a kid, and they were like cutting coins in half with the scissors and like cutting a shoe in half, and it's like people don't want that like that show at their house anymore. Right. They want to feel, whether it's true or not, they want to feel like they're in the driver's seat of this process, and they can determine like to what extent they participate in it. So I think it's something that would have happened, but it just made it like, okay.
I hate to say like I'm glad that it happened, but like honestly, like I've as an entrepreneur, like I've gone that route before where it's like go out and do something. It's like, ooh, too early.
Yeah.
Go back and lick your wounds and like get a day job. Like I've done that before, so like, I'm happy with how things went.
You're like it's like a funeral home director. It's like, all these people are dying, but ka-ching.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the pandemic, because you couldn't even like have the funeral stuff, but just in general, like if a lot of people are dying in your neighborhood, it's like you're sad, but also like pretty happy.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dichotomy.
Have you been canceled yet, Sean?
Not yet.
Okay.
We don't have nearly enough people watching us to care.
Okay, good.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's coming.
It's coming for all of us. It's coming for all of us. I feel like I had something else interesting to say, but maybe not.
No?
It either slipped my mind, or maybe I'm just completely tapped out.
Is that liquid death just scrambling your brain?
Yeah.
I don't want to like say too much disparaging things about Liquid Death because they sponsor all the cool podcasts. So I don't want to like burn that bridge.
Well, this might be a good way to get their attention. So speak up.
It's just water. It's just water.
That's what they want you to say.
Yeah.
I'm just so like, and I'm not even sure. Does all water taste like this? Like it's just so plain. There's like no flavor to it.
I don't know.
Did you genuinely know it wasn't? You thought it was sparkling water?
I thought there was bubbles for
Do they make one with sparkling?
I've only seen that.
This is the only one I've seen. I've never had it, I guess. But I thought it was going to be like a, what are those? The Perrier. Where it's just sparkling mineral water.
Mineral water, okay.
Mineral water.
It does say mountain water. Maybe there are some minerals in that.
Maybe. But there's no bubbles. It's
No.
just water. It's just water. I feel like I've been hoodwinked.
Yeah.
And taken for a ride.
It's just water. It's like, I don't know. It's freaking me out a little bit. Yeah, we were talking about the pandemic, COVID, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, what I was going to say is I do feel like it, in a way, who knows how our YouTube channel would have, grown, but early 2020, like April, May, everyone, like after the initial shock of it was over, they were like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to build a deck because I work from home and don't really actually work anymore.
Trapped here.
Yeah.
So that's like when the initial thing that like blew up our YouTube channel was April, May 2020. Just tons of search traffic. So it's interesting, just the weird byproducts of a international pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also, looking back, like 2018 or 19 is when we first met in Louisville. Like that was like before that whole junk happened, and now we're in, doing this here in New Jersey. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. All right, enough about COVID-19.
Right, yeah, we don't want to talk
I
about
didn't
it
mean to
anymore.
bring it up. I just think it's an interesting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like kids, everyone's always like, kids are always on their phone. They're ruining the world with the internet or whatever. So then now you have all those people entering the job market, probably utilizing softwares like this because they get it. So,
Yeah.
just a thought.
Oof. Yeah. Like that 10-year time frame for like the way that like 10, 15 years. Man, I don't know what's going to be going on in the world technology wise. Like it does kind of freak me out.
Yeah.
But
It's definitely going to be wild. You know what's really scary is like all of the, what do they call those? Deep fakes?
oh yeah.
That stuff. And like they have, like you can do it with audio, like
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
super easily. And there is plenty of footage of me and audio of me that like an AI can just like
Have you seen what
that's how you're
this?
gonna
cycle
canceled.
through that and
Yeah.
They
have
can
you
make
seen,
anything.
Have you seen what the groundwork team made you say on? No, I'm joking. We should totally do that. That'd
exactly,
be really
I'm
funny.
sure you could. It's freaky.
We could easily do it.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
so much recorded.
So that's something to think about for sure. I want to.
Oh.
What?
Well, I'm kind of interested to hear your take on AI since you're a tech guy. What's your thoughts on AI? We recently talked about that in an episode.
Yeah, lots of thoughts. I think there are some really interesting use cases for marketing in particular. Content, there's ways to like optimize the production of content. I follow some like, super smart marketing folks that have maybe the mindset or the ideas that, it's another tool in toolbox for people producing content, specifically written. I think that's also why video is super interesting though, is because despite like the deep fake stuff, like it still is kind of like, I don't know, that stuff is like kind of flash in the pan. The deep fake stuff is like, oh, it's a deep fake. Forget about it. It's just kind of like it's washed away. But I think like authenticity is going to be like the scarce commodity. Because, and video is great for that, right? Like that's why, the style of just kicking it around and like having a conversation is like so interesting and engaging to people, because like even you see it in like, have you ever like searched something like a blog? Like I told you guys, I'm trying to be a like non-terrible golfer and started to try to do that a little bit more. And so I was reading like something on like a new set of golf clubs, and like the article is very clearly written
By AI.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but it was very clearly written to like just rank on Google,
Right.
and it was like not really any good information. It's like, this is garbage. I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I have been doing is looking up a YouTube video of like an actual person who knows what they're talking about the thing, and learning that way. So I think that's, there's an element of the content creation stuff that I think will, you can kind of continue to game the system, just like writing content that's kind of formulaically built to catch the algorithms right. And maybe you can do that with AI, but I think what's really going to rise to the top is just like real people. Like, I think that'll be the scarcity that people crave, is like people being people and like actually connecting. Cause like, I think that's part of who we are as humans. Like, I think that's also why, you've seen like the metaverse stuff. I mean, maybe that takes like center stage, and like, that's the way we want to interact with people, is like with a pair of goggles on and just like wave our fake hand at their fake hand or something, like in like a virtual world.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where things go. Like, I really hope I'm not around to see that be like the primary mode of communication and connection, human to human. But I just think that there's certain elements that, and not to mention, like, we were at your job site today. It's like, it's going to be a long time till like AI and robots like
Can do that. Yeah. I think things like AI, I think the big thing you're seeing right now is like with obviously Chat GPT, like creating blog articles and stuff like that. Those things always seem like it's an advantage for like the very, very early adopters of that.
Yeah.
But if AI can just create blog content on everything, like, it's just going to be flooded with that content. So
Right.
it's like, it would be a huge advantage if only a few people had it. They could really capitalize on it. But with everyone being accessible to it, you're going to just see more and more of that, like, formulaic blog stuff where it's like just trying to rank so
Right.
that they can stuff affiliate links in there and
Right.
as many ads as possible. But you'll start to see, like, Google's big thing now is going to be like, how do they decipher? They're going to be like battling against that like AI regurgitation of info, because their thing is always like they want to serve the most helpful, relevant thing. But now I'm thinking about it. Their algorithm is AI. Is their AI going to listen to the human handlers and say, you need to seek out this other blog AI and eliminate it from our search rankings? Or is the Google AI going to side with the blog AI and come after us? Something to think about. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. There's like, I don't know. But I think what's interesting about some of the content stuff you mentioned, like, even that is like, how do you really differentiate there? That's the question.
Yeah.
Do you, the way I've seen and heard people talk about it to be productive as like, or almost like a research assistant.
Yeah.
And we've done this with some of our content of, provide me a summary of XYZ thing. It's like, okay, well, that saved me 10 minutes, 15 minutes of searching around and clicking on some crappy article that's optimized for SEO and really doesn't tell me anything, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it like kind of keeps you from that.
Yeah.
So like, it's a good kind of backstop for like research, I think, is like honestly the most interesting use case I have seen. And I've seen a lot of like contractor chat rooms and stuff that are like, tell us how you use AI. And it's all like almost like, please email me or contact me if like you have like a real use case. But like, when I have seen conversations like, what's your real use case? It's like kind of not very good.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of not like,
yeah.
hours saved or revenue generated or any of that stuff, like I haven't seen. Now there is some actually really cool stuff in actually writing software code.
Yeah.
There are some models that actually will complete code, and like our development team utilizes that sometimes. Sometimes the code is really good. Sometimes it's a good hint to, how to structure the code. And it's just like inline. So it will like the autocomplete for your email. Like if you're in Gmail, it'll like say, oh, hey, if you write some, it'll be like thing, and how you're like, yes, that's it. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you.
So that's like the type of thing that's happening in code space. And there's also like visual editors. Like you can say, make me a landing page that has these visual elements. Subscribe to my newsletter page with a picture of subscribe to my cat newsletter with a picture of a cat and like a subscribe thing, and it'll like actually create that image for you, and then also give you the basically the code, the front end code, CSS code to like actually put that in place, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
that is cool.
We tried on our project giveaway. There was one part, and I think we already talked about this, about the pepperoni fish thing, where I was like,
oh yeah.
I said, I don't really like fishing, and Catherine's like, have you ever been fishing? And I'm like, yeah, once, but we used pepperoni as bait, and we got some weird pepperoni fish. And Steve went online to some sort of AI thing. I forget what it was called, but it was for pictures.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get the AI to generate an image of like pepperoni fish. And like the things that it came up with were like so, I don't know, it was just so weird to see like, this is a computer trying to determine like what they mean by pepperoni fish. Like some of it was like a pepperoni pizza with fish also on it. Some of it was like a fish that had the coating of like a pepperoni pizza. It was just like very weird and interesting, but that wasn't a great use case.
There's AI. And like honestly,
but it was fun.
That's like an absolutely ridiculous and fun example of like what AI is like can be used for, but like I don't know what the percentage of times that type of activity is like kind of the input and like desired output, but it's probably more than people would want to lead on. Is like, let me just like see if I can do like a pepperoni fish picture. It's like, okay, are we really moving the world forward here? Which actually, there's some studies about how the usage of ChatGPT has decreased. Like, I don't even want to say a number because it's probably wrong, but like in a significant amount.
Oh, of course.
Some say it's related to school being out, like college students.
Oh yeah.
Like just like, summertime. There's some other thoughts on that, but there will certainly be industries and serious business implications in the trades and outside of the trades. But I think inside of the trades, certainly something interesting to pay attention to, but I wouldn't stake your business on like AI.
Yeah.
Unless
you're talking about Allen Iverson, the original AI.
The answer, baby. Yeah.
He is the answer. All right, well, let's transition back to entrepreneurship.
What are we doing here?
I know we went on a hard pepperoni fish tangent, but let's circle back to the entrepreneurship. Since that is one of our main topics of this podcast, entrepreneurship, and you are an entrepreneur. Yeah. And you've said several times today that you have an entrepreneurial spirit. So where does that come from? Or tell us your entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, I mean,
grandfather's an entrepreneur. Dad has had a stint as an entrepreneur. I mowed, lawns in high school. Like I'm sure a lot of people.
I feel like that comes up a lot.
I mean, it's the thing, right? Actually, my first job, excuse me. My first job, I asked my mom how old I was when this actually happened. And I also needed to confirm with her that this wasn't just like in my imagination that this actually happened because I was young. She said 14. I feel like I was younger than that, but my first job was, you know what Pachysandra is?
Yeah.
Was cutting heads of Pachysandra because you can propagate a head of Pachysandra.
One of my favorite ground covers.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have it at my house. My wife hates it, but I'm like, hey, listen, this means something to me.
Yeah.
Because my first job was cutting heads of Pachysandra. I'd get a penny for every head I put in a bucket. And that was my first job. So it was like, I remember my back hurting. I remember riding on a 5-gallon bucket in like literally the back of a van to like some estate where whoever this nursery owner had convinced like the property owner, like, hey, we probably do your maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, to allow illegal, you know, child labor to happen on their property.
1 cent per head. That's not great.
I mean, keep in mind, I'm not
How old were you?
young. I was probably, let's see. So I was, I don't know, 12 to 14 probably. And that puts it at like 95.
So it's like
97.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
You could damn near buy a house for about a couple bucks back then, right?
When you can't work legally, you gotta take what you can
yeah,
get
you really got
when
to.
you're underage.
Plus, you're probably not claiming that on your taxes. So
Yeah.
No, I think I did
Pure
get paper
income.
checks. So like,
really?
God knows how my parents handled that.
This is like the most legitimate
like-
child labor scheme I've ever heard
I'm
of.
telling you.
Wow.
But like, if you like, my mom is like totally the person who just like figure that out and just be like, go get him, Tiger. Loving and supportive, like for sure. But hey, it's good for you to have a job, you know, learn how to work hard. And,
Yeah.
and that, I mean, that's one early experience, and you know, just mowing and doing. I remember like, one of my high school friends, her dad, as I was mowing, he was like, hey, I need 40 yards of mulch in my backyard. Big house.
40 yards is a lot.
I didn't know how much 40 yards was. I called a buddy, and was like, hey, can you help me spread some mulch today? He's like, sure, man.
That's like a week with 2 people.
He's like, sure, man. I was like, and then truck came. We were like, oh boy, we are outmatched.
Yeah.
So, you know, a couple more friends, a little more time than we expected. Hourly rate on whatever I figured out how to charge them, you know, probably ate my shorts or whatever, but it was money, high school, whatever. So like, I don't know, just always had that like type of thing. I think honestly, so I graduated college in 2008, and like, that's right when like the Facebook stuff was going on. And so it was like, whoa, the internet, right? And like, so I even at that age just started looking at like different ways to get involved in tech and whatnot, with the background of like kind of hands dirty, you know, coming home with like mulch dust like in every crevice of my like in my eyelids, you know. So yeah, it's kind of just like a mashup of stuff, you know.
Interesting.
I want to kind of get your insight into, you know, because you are an entrepreneur, you run a team of 6, which is kind of very similar to us. How do you go about like being a leader, getting people to buy in? I know a lot of the work is done remote, like you said. Taylor, right? He's one of the sales guys. He's in New Orleans. Your head of sales is remote as well.
Ish.
Remote,
Indianapolis area, but yeah.
So I find that must be a tough thing to juggle. Like, new company, like it's kind of all on the promise of growth. Like, you know, nobody is going to, the business is not going to be successful if it stays at this where you're at. Like,
right.
It has to grow to be successful. So like getting people to buy into that. What are your thoughts on just like creating that team of people that are all in it together when, you know, they probably could go to another company that's more established, more stable? Like, what is that vision that you're painting for them? Like, why should they be a part of it? Yeah.
It's a great question. I think it honestly starts a lot with hiring. Like you mentioned giving prospective customer homework.
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of what we do too. And when I'm bringing on people to the team, not that we've done it like dozens and dozens of times or anything, but it's a big part of the whole, making the team successful is getting the right people on board. And when I have brought people on, this started with first hire after Taylor, because Taylor was like, oh crap, like I need help. And like, then Taylor came in like riding on a cloud. It was like, I will help you. I was like, yes. That was like that was like pandemic. So like our interest just like shot through the roof.
Yeah.
And like, it was like, shoot, we got to get, so I didn't give him the spiel, although it was inherent in, like, he sent me a message on Friday and it was Saturday morning at like 9 a.m. It was like, hey, you ready to hustle? He's like, yeah, I'm ready to hustle. I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. And like literally just hit the ground running. But since then, what I've done is I have it's not more than a paragraph, but it's basically a level set of this is what it means to be on the team. There are times where your projects that you're leading are going to have to take a back seat because what we need to do as a company is maybe different than what you were working on, and that's okay. You need to be flexible. We're going to support you when it swings back to something you're passionate about, but we need you to, kind of bob and weave with the whole thing. Obviously, it's not that loosely written, but that's the gist of it, right? Is like flexibility, helping each other out, figuring out, being creative, having fun with it. So it's a message that's sent before we even bring people on the team.
Yeah.
And it's simple. It's usually in an Excel sheet right after the line where it's like, here's what we're going to pay you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and also this, like, basically don't be a jerk. No ego, leave your ego at the door. We're going to work together to make something happen. Yeah. And it's going to be awesome. So that's like the level set stuff that we do. And again, it's easy. Like, that's not anything that's like particular to our company. It can be, whatever type of business you're running. But I think what even just recently, Sean, I was sharing with you that even just in the last couple of weeks, there's a book title, and I would like to say I read a ton of books, but I don't. But there's a book title called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," or something of that.
Yeah,
something in that line. And that's what I told the team recently. We're in the summer season, gearing up for a bunch of fall events here, and that's kind of what I told them. Is like, hey, we need to shift some things up. We need to be more interesting and like just better.
Yeah,
like I think everybody can relate to that. And so I broke that down into 2 themes, and so we have kind of like a code word for like each of those different themes. One is fishing related, Sean.
Pepperoni fish?
Yeah, it's pepperoni fish. It's so what a coincidence. It's amazing. But those 2 themes are guiding a lot of what we're doing. And, it's quick sprint stuff. We're an agile team. It's technology, so we can move pretty quick. So that'll be the theme until we start what we call our event season. But it's like a calling card of a couple of words, and it like kind of drives what we're doing. I know that there are like college football teams and like different sports organizations that will have a theme for the year. So it's kind of similar to that, but that's something that I feel really, really good about, especially as we're like getting after it, this next couple months.
I love that.
You said the book title was "What Got You Here Won't Get You There."
Sure.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I find it, sometimes you really don't have to read the book. Like the title, I get it. It's like all the things that you did to get you here aren't necessarily the things that are going to take you to that next spot. And that's something that we always have to constantly like reevaluate. Like, okay, all of these things that we did got us to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Are more of these same things, if we double down on these things, is going to double our response to it or our return, or we're at this point now we have to do something different to get to that next point. And I think that's one of the fun challenging, frustrating, exciting, annoying, terrible, and great things about growing a business is the problems always change. The where you came from and where you're going next is always changing, and it's what keeps it interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean,
guess.
it makes it challenging and hard and all of those things, but it's also like, I know that, I mean, honestly, the people on my team, that's why they're here, right? Like, that's part of the paragraph that I send them is like, you can go find a more cushy job that you're just going to like kind of find some times that you're just like twiddling your thumbs. But
Yeah.
like, if that's you, like probably not going to fit very well here, you know? So like, yeah, but you know, then it's on me to like actually lead that way too, right? To like set that direction, set the pace of play, and play the game the way that I would expect everybody else to play it. Despite all of the challenges of like being the lead, right? There's a lot. It's not easy in any business, right?
Yeah.
But it's just part of the deal.
Couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
As you're growing the business, especially the type of business that you have, it's the future is kind of predicated on growth. You're going to have to grow this. That's the goal. That's kind of what everything is structured around. What do you think is your best skill? Like what are you going to right now? You're probably doing a whole lot of everything.
Yeah.
Some things you're probably great at. Some things you're probably not that great at. Like what if you get to a point where you have 200 employees and whatever thousands of subscribers? What is that position that you think you would take? Like you delegate everything else. What's the one thing that is your backbone of your entrepreneurial body?
So,
Do you like that?
sure. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think there's two things. Can I have two, or can I have two backbones, or just one backbone?
We'll allow it.
Like vertebrae, two vertebrae.
Yeah.
L5
You can have
or
Scoliosis
two spines.
situation,
You're like
yeah.
what are they? Like Siamese entrepreneurial twins, right?
I don't think,
Yeah, sure.
I think it's conjoined twins. Don't get canceled.
Oh, is that okay? Conjoined twins.
Conjoined twins.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Conjoined entrepreneurial twins.
Anyways.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Business stuff.
You have two business spines. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
all out.
So I think one would be relationships. I mean, like you and I have been kind of chatting on and off. Like it's just like, I think that's one of my strengths. It's just like building relationships, and you know, so I think that's gonna be part of it for forever. Like I'm just like a people person. I just kind of like doing that. And I'm kind of stuck with that now, I guess, too, because like those things tend to carry with you, right? As relationships do. But I'm also really passionate about like the creative process of building new things. So software is great for that because you can just like what if we did this? You know, like what if, so like on the plane here, that's what I was doing. It's like outlining. Our little note-taking app is, I downloaded a section of that so I could just start to own that. And I told the team, like, this is my deliverable for my trip here is, aside from meeting with you all and a couple of the meetings, like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to have this chunk of the mashup of the trades knowledge and the other technology stuff. Like, this is the art piece, the creative element that I'm responsible for. So I hope to forever be involved in that, because it's like I love music, I love art in like weird forms too. Like, not like, I appreciate like the creative process. Just like you were saying earlier in riding around, it's like anybody who can like create a different sound, or like if I hear an album that has like different versions of an artist, or an artist puts out an album that's like very different from the one before, it's like, all right, respect, right?
Yeah.
So I hope to always be involved in that side of the business.
I think building software is a lot like building projects, like building construction projects.
Very much.
And I think we're probably very similar in that way, that it's like you have these basic rules that you kind of need to follow. Like, this is how the things kind of go together. It has to be, there are these core rules that you have to essentially follow, but then you learn how to like kind of dance around them, and how you can create like a structure that looks different and does something different. And hey, if I take these two properties and mash them together, I can remove this post and like do all this stuff. And I think a lot of people, when they think of coding, they don't think creativity, but that's like essentially that's all it is, really. When you're trying to create this thing out of, I don't know, numbers and letters, or however you do it. Yeah, it's I think there's probably a lot of similarities with what we do. Which
so
is
much.
Cool.
I mean, like even down to like design process and all that stuff. Those creative decisions early on inform like the bedrock structure of a project. Like you were looking at the kind of the distance, the height of the deck surface today at the project, and like, hey, we need 8 or 9 stair. How do we do that, right? Like, and that was, there's like some like ground truth, right? Like there's just like some there's some structure in place that you can't necessarily move. Yeah. Or like the project's already far enough along where it's like, okay, got it. Here's the data points, and like here's how we're gonna do it. Like the software, there's so many analogies, and like some of our advisors will tell you that too. It's just like, and they use that analogy of foundation, and then kind of going up towards like building a house. It's just very, very similar. Yeah. Business is easy, It's just like building from the ground up,
It's like building Legos. Like,
it doesn't matter what you're doing.
It'll all work itself out, and everything will be cool. Yeah. We're almost at we pretty much are at our happy hour. I have 2 more things I wanted to ask. Is that okay? Am I allowed?
You are allowed. I will grant it.
I'm here, man.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Any favorite books that you would recommend as a business owner, or otherwise, just something that has impacted you in some sort of profound way? Make sure it's profound.
Profound. There is. So I mentioned I'm not a huge reader. So I appreciate you putting me on the spot.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it could just be like one that you really appreciated the title of. Like, that's fine. Yeah, this one had a really cool picture on the front, and it changed my life. Whatever.
The inside cover is like really compelling.
Yeah. It could even be a movie.
No. I do have a book. It's more of a tech book, but it's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's got by a guy named Ben Horowitz, who runs the venture capital firm.
He's read it.
It's kind of a story of like the early 90s. I don't know if it's very applicable to building a software business, but also very interesting for those who are like just interested in like kind of like the sport of business, I would say. Yeah. It's just his story of selling a company, basically navigating the transition of on-premises computing to like cloud computing as that like started to get going, and like just massive disruptions in like how tech infrastructure worked in like the early days of Silicon Valley. So again, kind of niche book, but it's like he starts every chapter with like he's a big rap fan, so he starts every chapter with like a quote from a rap song or a lyric from a rap song, which is kind of interesting. It like really sets the tone for like just like the energy for the book. So it's kind of interesting. By the way, he went to go on to sell the company, like basically pull it out of the grips of bankruptcy, and then is now one of the most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. So yeah, that's one. That's probably what I recommend. I mean, I'm inspired by a lot of different other stuff, but hard things about hard things. Good one.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that, and I feel like I might actually have that book because I'm not a huge reader, but I love buying books for sure.
I'm with you there, man.
A ton of books.
My wife rolls her eyes like
hobby.
so hard every time a book. Oh gosh, no.
I just feel like obviously it's better if you read the book and everything, but there's still something about just like having a book. There's certain books I like to just like have on my bedside. What do you call that, a nightstand?
Yeah.
They just like seeing them.
I think
usually those are the ones I have read.
I think you get smarter just by buying them.
And like being
I think that's
around
how
them,
it works.
I really do think it works
That's
that
really
way.
how it works.
Because you can learn so much just from reading the title, honestly. So,
I agree.
Last question I have was, what kind of, different like apps for organizing your daily life? Like, is there anything that you use that you'd recommend for people just trying to get a grasp on their own life?
So I have one
basically. No.
I have one life one, especially for primarily if you have kids. I guess it's a good thing. But one that we use internally is called Notion. It's a mashup of like Google Docs and like Evernote and kind of all that stuff, and Trello. Like it has like a Kanban like planning tool inside of it, task management, project management. So I think it's notion.so is the website. Relatively inexpensive, but it's basically like we have everything from like team bios in there that just kind of like sit like on the left hand side. It's just like team information, and we do fun stuff about what type of music do you like? You can know I'm pissed off when this, like
when I scream at you.
Yeah. But then we also do like all of our project planning. So it's very free form. You can buy or just get templates online for free for like different types of projects and stuff. So Notion is a great one. So that's one. The other one is an app called Go Henry. So if you have kids that are of the age where you're like doing allowance and stuff like that, like my kids are 10 and almost 8, and I can basically give them their allowance digitally. They have a physical card. They ship it to you with their name on it. And they've lost like 17 times, and we have to buy a new one for $5 or whatever. So that's a little annoying, but they always ask me, what's my how much money do I have in my account? And you do savings, and I kind of break it up and stuff. And like you do like tasks, and it's basically like a chore chart, but digitally. Yeah. And then they can spend with the card. And they really love going to Target, and they're like, buy a $12 Lego thing, and they're like, Dad, what's my PIN? I have to look it up on my phone every time. It's like, so that's a cool one. That's been really effective for us. Like, and we use it also for like major breakthroughs. Like I have a major breakthrough bonus for each kid of like when they actually accomplish like a big, either emotional or like whatever hurdle they're dealing with. We kind of set those milestones. So that's another one that I use. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I like that.
That's very interesting. Was that a Shark Tank thing? Go Henry? I feel like I remember.
Very possible. I don't know.
It's a very interesting concept. But like the card actually works. Like
it's a regular card. Yeah, really? It's got a chip and it's a whole bit. Huh. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now I am on the hunt. I've seen some things for like our kids are getting into sports and stuff, which is just pure chaos. Pure chaos. And I was telling you, my wife travels for work. I travel a good bit, so it's a lot. So I might actually use Notion for this, but we're looking for a way to like manage our family calendar and like also give our kids the insight so they could like flick through the week and like say, oh, hey, I got this. It's like, yeah, don't like, whatever, get ice cream on your soccer practice jersey because you got practice tomorrow or whatever, like, so like those types of things where they can actually start to take some ownership of their calendar. I'm searching for that. I might build it in Notion because you can kind of like build those interfaces and like maybe just get an iPad to have in the kitchen area or something. But
I really want to check that out because I'd never heard of Notion until like last week. I was listening to a podcast. I think it was that same one I was talking about. It was like the creator economy, and it was a guy that it's like so niche. He just creates Notion templates, and he's got a YouTube channel where he just talks about like this really high level like Notion hacks. And he said it's like I'd never even heard of it until last week, and but it's one of those like kind of cult following things where like people are like diehards about creating these custom templates, and he has like a subscription thing that he'll sell, and he'll sell courses and all this stuff, and he's like makes lots and lots of money on this like super niche thing, but it sounded really cool, and now you're talking about it, it sounds very cool. So I have a notion that we should check it out.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
See what I did there? That's pretty good, huh? Well, I guess that's it for this week. Jeff, thank you for coming all the way from Indianapolis to beautiful and hot New Jersey for this podcast. Really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what else do we say? Groundwork.com, check it out if you want to.
HelloGroundwork.com is the thing if you want to check it out.
What are your social media handles? Hello Groundwork?
Hello Groundwork, everywhere.
Yep.
Hello Groundwork.
Yeah.
I just imagine that in like either
Hello
a
Governor,
British or...
but like hello Groundwork. Yeah,
hello Groundwork.
Yeah.
Groundwork's hard to say in an Australian accent. Can you try it?
Do you want to give them the bad sales story thing?
Do you have one?
I've got a crazy bad sales story from a customer of ours.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Should I roll with it?
Yeah.
All right. So, painting contractor.
Well, hold on. We're going to do, so an ongoing thing that we are going to do moving forward is a bad sales story. And this will be our first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad sales story.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. As you have bad sales stories, send them in. We've got a link or something. You can do that.
Yes. We'll put the link in the bio and description and everything.
But, so I got a couple, but the one that I thought was maybe the most like cringy, to use the young person's term, was I've got a painting contractor friend, and he got called out to somebody's house, interior paint job, and he gets there, and the guy's like, walking through the house very like calmly. The house is in a bit of a disarray, but he's like, okay, like this is a little weird, like feels a little off. This guy's chill, so like whatever. But he gets into the house a little bit more, and like there's spray painting all over the walls. And he's like, huh, interesting. Starts to look a little closer, and apparently this guy had maybe been into some extracurricular activities outside of the relationships he maybe had committed to.
Oh,
and
no.
There were expletives and all sorts of fun sayings spray painted on the wall after all of this had come to light. And he's just walking through saying, hey, I think I might need a paint job on the interior of my house. Okay. I guess we'll help you paint over this mess here.
Did he end up getting the job?
I couldn't tell you. I was so like flabbergasted by the story. I don't know if he got the job, but
so basically he cheated on his wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or husband, whatever.
Yeah.
And they got mad and spray painted like,
yeah, you
cheater,
scumbag, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow, on the inside of the house.
Yeah, pretty legit. There's another
it's personal.
I think it was the same guy who was telling me that he showed up to an appointment and this woman was in like 100% fishnet everything.
Could be either
Like greeted
It was
him
a bad
at
thing.
the...
It was a bad thing. It was like, just here I am and
Just ready for this appointment.
just
full
gonna
fishnet.
talk to you and
pretend that
Full
this is
fishnet.
normal. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. I'm sure
Would
there
you
are.
say she was
Oh
kind of
my
like a
gosh.
pepperoni fish in the fishnet?
Oh,
Eh.
not your best.
Eh.
Bit of a stretch.
Well, you know what I say. You know what? The only joke that's never funny is the one that you don't tell.
Yeah.
True.
You do say that a good bit.
You gotta find the people that are gonna laugh at the jokes anyways, you know.
Exactly,
So like
yeah.
that's the yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for now. That's it for this week.
Yeah.
That's it for this week. Thank you
Thank
for
you so much
coming
for
in,
coming,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah.
This was great.
Hello,
Thanks for having us.
Groundwork. And thanks for also coming, Catherine.
Thank you for coming, Sean,
Thank
as
you
well.
so much. And I guess till next time, this has been the Hardworking Happy Hour.
See you next week.